Okay, hi guys, welcome back to a new video. So I'm recording from a new place today. So starting and continuing with mm, the series on biopsy interpretation. Again, today we are dealing with the third part of what I was still talking about these days, which is colonic biopsies. So, the third part today is more like a pitfall and challenge. Like we discussed about the benign colonic lesions, not the malignant ones. I've already taken one lecture where I have discussed the problem areas of a malignant versus a benign biopsy. The adenomas and the polyps I'll be taking separately. So what we were dealing with was infectious diseases and IBDs. So again today the part that I'm going to be covering is the closest differential diagnosis of any case of IBD that we receive as a pathologist. Okay, so be it adult or pediatric in India, the closest differential diagnosis to an IBD is a tuberculosis. So whenever the gastro person will or the gastroenterologist will do an endoscopic biopsy, you need to take certain history like as I had also told you previously that IBDs are not purely microscopic diagnosis. You need endoscopic confirmation with your microscopic confirmation. So you will always need the type of ulcers that are forming, the extent of involvement of the large bowel, whether it is a continuous involvement, rectal sparing is there, it's a skip lesion, whether there's cobblestoning or not, the ulcers are transverse or longitudinal, lymph nodes are involved or not, is there any history of tuberculosis? All these findings are also important in diagnosing IBD versus tuberculosis. So apart from these findings, if I go for other differentials of an IBD, infectious TB is the most common, but there's something known as I had told you about IBD undetermined significance, where we get certain changes, but they are not qualifying for a complete IBD. You might get busy lamina in the ECHO guidelines or as per the European RC path, a busy lamina propria with evidence of neutrophils amounts to cryptitis. But a lot of other books, the American literature says that the neutrophils should be there in the crypts to call it cryptitis. Now, you might get neutrophils in the lamina in tuberculosis also. So I don't prefer just because there's a neutrophil in the lamina to call something as a cryptitis. I still go by the dictum that cryptitis is a neutrophil in the crypt, and a cryptapsis is present of neutrophils and necrotic debris in the lumen of the crypt. So if it is not inside this or in the lining epithelium and it is only over here, then I refrain from giving something as IBD. You can give it if your clinical history is matching, if your endoscopic history points to it, you can give it as an IBD US. But because you're not getting any other findings of activity or chronicity, and for that there are multiple scoring systems available. I'm talking of the pathological scoring systems, not the pediatric Pukai scoring. I'm not talking about the Pukai scoring. Pukai scoring is for the clinician to grade or to label their IBD. I'm talking about the histopathological scoring systems that are available. There's Nancy's, there's Jabor's, and there are many more. And you can use any one of them. So you need to, and a lot of other scoring systems are still being worked upon. So another differential to IBD US, I would rather say, not a frank IBD, is a microscopic colitis. Now, microscopic colitis will have features similar to an IBD, but the extent of damage that you see in on endoscopy will not be as much as it is in a frank IBD. Okay, a Crohn's or a ulcerative colitis. So the microscopic colitis has two entities, lymphocytic and collagenous colitis. Collagenous colitis, you see a 15 mm thick band of collagen just below the lining epithelium. It is visible at low power. It is very characteristic. Lymphocytic colitis, you are going to see very busy lamina propria with dense lymphocytic inflammation in the lamina. This kind of so there's a cutoff there to the types or number of lymphocytes. There's a cutoff to number of eosinophils. Seeing basal plasmacytosis means crypt के base पे plasmacytosis is an indication of IBD. Also seen sometimes or a lot of times in tuberculosis. So you might get, lymphocytic or lymphoplasmacytic infiltrated TB and IBD also. But lymphocytic colitis is purely lymphocytic inflammation, dense lymphocytic inflammation in the lamina propria. Okay, and then you can of course learn all the cutoffs. There's cutoffs for eosinophils. There's, if I remember, a cutoff for lymphocytes also. I'll get back to it. I think it's 15, 20 or 25 to 30. See, celiac has a cutoff. Fine. I don't remember if the cutoff is there for lymphocytic colitis, but eosinophilic colitis, yes, it is. So I will get back to you in the next lecture with if there is a actual cutoff for lymphocytic colitis in the colon biopsies. Okay. Celiac disease, yes, there is a cutoff. You get urinal biopsies, and then of course you know the Marsh-Oberhuer grading. Okay. Then acute versus chronic infection is a very, very common differential and a pitfall for an IBD. So I told you the most common pitfall is TB. TB will have a lot of lymphoplasmacytic infiltrate. TB will show a granuloma. Crohn's also shows a granuloma. The granulomas and Crohn's are smaller. They are less destructive. There is less or no necrosis. The granuloma of TB is big. It is confluent. मतलब एक दो तीन like granulomas एक दूसरे के साथ, so if there's a granuloma, so there'll be one over here, then one over here, then one over here. So this is called confluent granuloma. They are large. They destroy the crypts and you will get necrosis. You put a AFB, you might get that positive also. So you need endoscopy and clinical to actually rule out whether it is a TB or a Crohn's. But there are pointers. Cryptitis, cryptapsis, crypt architectural distortion, you might get both in TB and Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. So what are the key features? Langerhans giant cell, necrotic granulomas, large confluent granulomas. These are pointers towards TB. Mesenteric lymph nodes, fine, pointer towards TB, and of course a positive history. Irritable bowel syndrome, characteristically, clinically, it might, because there will be altered bowel history, diarrhea, etc. You might get bowel pain, stomach pain, etc. But there is no histological finding for IBS. It's just a syndrome. So again, difference, granulomas and caseation, I've already told you. Another is so another thing very, very important, CMV colitis. A lot of times in children, since I work in a pediatric setup, you will get clinicians asking us to look for CMV. So if you see over here, this is a CMV inclusion in the lining epithelium. It looks large, pinkish, and it is seen in the endothelial lining or the epithelial lining. Fine. So see, all these look like inclusions. Fine. This is probably, see, this is a very beautiful inclusion in the lining endothelium. Okay, so CMV colitis is a very common differential that we get. Presence of these kind of, necrotic areas, cryptitis, cryptapsis, they can be there in CMV colitis also. So in CMV colitis, what we basically look for are those reddish, pinkish inclusions that I showed you in the endothelium or the lining epithelium, and that is how we conclude that this thing could be a CMV colitis. All this reded over here are RBCs and this is edema. Okay, so that's a very, very important differential for a IBD case. Okay, CMV IHC, yes, can be helpful. There is you can do PCR for CMV serologically. So these are the ways that you can diagnose, but you do not need an IHC. If there's an inclusion, you can very well see the inclusion. GVHDs, post-transplant cases are another differential to CMV colitis. They present like IBD. They have bloody diarrhea, etc. They might have both bloody or non-bloody diarrhea. So there what we look at are apoptotic bodies, and there also we search for such kind of inclusions. If there is a radiotherapy, chemotherapy given, then also you might get similar findings, similar clinical features like diarrhea, vomiting, etc. in adults or in children. Again, then there'll be a lot of reactive atypia and there'll be stromal mucin, etc. Very, very edematous stroma with a lot of reactive atypia. So history and endoscopy is very, very important in making your diagnosis. So dysplasias in IBD I'll be taking in detail. So there are two types. There is sporadic dysplasia versus DAM. DAM is sporadic dysplasia associated lesion or mass. DAM is in IBD, which is endoscopically, in an IBD there is an endoscopically visible adenoma or a polyp arising from a non-inflamed mucosa, and it is very characteristic from a true DAM. True DAM is true polyp, so ulcerative colitis has a lot of pseudopolyposis. Fine. In between that, from the normal area, you might get a polyp arising in a case of UC. Then we have to see whether it is a true DAM, true dysplasia with loss of maturation at the top, bluish nuclei, crowding, hyperplasia of the nuclei, or irregular crypts, or it is just a reactive change. So that is very important, and I'm be taking this in detail also. So this is, see, so you can see this looks very blue, can you see? And there's a lot of loss of the goblet cells. So this is kind of look how a dam looks, a dysplastic, very bluish, very pleomorphic, and loss of goblet cells. So this is a dysplasia, and you can see mitotic figures also. So this is a dysplasia arising on the background of there's some C architectural distortion. So this could be an IBD where a flat dysplasia is arising. It's like a dam. Okay. So these are the types of dysplasias, a true polyp or of this thing I will take in detail later also. So there can be flat dysplasias where you do not see any polyp, any adenoma, nothing, but there is presence of dysplasia in between, ongoing IBD, etc. Then there are pedunculated and sessile polyps. Polyp which has a dysplasia as an adenoma. Just remember that. Polyp with dysplasia, it has to be an adenoma. Polyp without a dysplasia, a lot of types which I'll be dealing with later on. Fine. So we need to see whether it is a polyp with adenoma or adenoma-like polyp or an adenomatous polyp. This one has some, dysplastic changes, or a dam which occurs on the background of IBD, or it is a flat dysplasia. All these things, and then the treatment alters, the follow-up alters according to that. So I'll be taking this in detail later on. See, these are the common challenges in terms of variability is there, overlap between the microscopic findings is there, adequacy of the biopsy is a very important, a thing. It should be an adequate biopsy from the correct area. And I told you what kind of involvement of the colon, if I'm talking about IBD colitis, is there. So I need to know whether there's skip lesions or there's a continuous backwash ilitis, cobblestoning is there, etc. We need to know all these, okay? IHC is molecular. The reporting is whether there's, see, either you report the activity, chronicity, and dysplasia. That's all you do in IBD. There's nothing else that you need to do. Okay. So beware of those mimickers I have discussed. Clinical correlation is important. The dysplastic part is very short in this lecture because this was not meant. I'm just telling you a progression and the differentials of IBD. I'll be taking polyps and then dysplasias in a separate lecture. So I hope this helps you, and I'll come back to you with a new lecture after some time. Thank you so much for your patient hearing.